The crystal chandeliers of Dubai's Royal Oasis Hotel sparkled above the crowd of well-dressed guests. Natalie Reid smoothed down her blue silk dress and checked that everything was in place for the charity gala she had spent weeks organizing. At 32, Natalie had built a good life for herself in Dubai. 3 years as an event coordinator at one of the city's most exclusive hotels had given her access to a world of luxury that still sometimes felt unreal to the girl from a small American town. "Excellent work, as always," her boss said, nodding with approval at the perfectly arranged ballroom. Natalie smiled and moved through the crowd, making sure everything ran smoothly. That's when she first saw him. Robert Wilson stood tall among a group of businessmen, his custom suit and confident smile marking him as someone important. Their eyes met across the room, and he raised his glass slightly in her direction. Later, as the event was winding down, Robert approached her. "This was quite impressive," he said. His British accent added to his charm. "I've been to events all over the world, but this had a special touch." "Thank you. I'm Natalie Reid, the coordinator," she replied, trying to keep things professional despite the warm feeling his attention created. "Robert Wilson. I develop luxury properties here in Dubai," he said, handing her his business card. "Perhaps you'd like to see my latest project. We're looking for someone with your eye for detail to help with the launch event." As they talked, Natalie noticed the gold wedding band on his finger. She had been in Dubai long enough to know the rules, both written and unwritten. Getting involved with a married man was not just morally complicated, it could mean real trouble in this part of the world. But over the next few days, Robert was hard to ignore. He sent a beautiful flower arrangement to her office. He called with a seemingly professional request to meet about his property launch. Against her better judgment, Natalie agreed to meet him for coffee. "My marriage is just a business arrangement now," Robert explained when she finally asked about his wife. "Olivia and I married to connect our families' businesses. We haven't been truly together for years, but divorce is complicated when you're linked to one of the influential local families." Natalie knew she should walk away, yet something about Robert made her feel truly seen for the first time since moving to Dubai. In a city where everything was about appearance and status, he seemed to value her mind, her creativity. Their coffee meetings turned into dinners. Dinners turned into walks along the beach after dark. And 3 weeks after they met, he kissed her under the stars near the Burj Al Arab. "This is dangerous," she whispered. "Only if we're caught," he replied. "I have a private villa in Jumeirah. No one would know." The rational part of Natalie's brain screamed warnings. The lonely part of her heart silenced them. That night became the first of many stolen evenings together. Robert was everything her previous boyfriends weren't: mature, successful, attentive. When he wasn't with her, he sent messages and gifts. A gold bracelet, designer shoes, a key to his private villa. "Just until I can straighten things out with Olivia," he promised. 1 year, maybe 2, and we can stop hiding. Natalie believed him, or perhaps she wanted to believe him so badly that she ignored the red flags. The way he never introduced her to his friends, how he sometimes disappeared for days with vague explanations, the calls he would take in another room, speaking too quietly for her to hear. What Natalie didn't know, as she fell deeper in love with Robert Wilson, was that she wasn't the first woman to receive his special attention in Dubai, nor did she realize just how dangerous loving him would prove to be. 3 months flew by like a desert wind. Natalie and Robert's secret romance grew more intense with each passing day. She now lived 2 very different lives in Dubai. During daylight hours, she was the professional event coordinator, respected by her co-workers and praised by her boss. But when darkness fell over the city, she became Robert's hidden lover. Tonight, they sat on the balcony of his private villa. The lights of Dubai sparkled below them like fallen stars. Robert poured more champagne into her glass and placed a small red box beside her plate. "Open it," he said with that smile that always made her heart beat faster. Inside was a diamond necklace that must have cost more than she earned in 6 months. Natalie gasped. "Robert, this is too much. I can't accept this." "Of course you can," he said, taking the necklace and fastening it around her neck. His fingers lingered on her skin. "Nothing is too good for you." These expensive gifts had become common. Her apartment now held designer clothes, jewelry, and even a small painting by a famous artist. Each gift made her feel special, but also more trapped. The more she accepted from him, the harder it would be to walk away. Any progress with the divorce? She asked carefully. She tried not to bring it up too often, but 3 months had passed since he first promised her they would be together openly. Robert's face darkened. Olivia is being difficult. Her family has connections with government officials. If I push too hard, I could lose my business permits. I understand, Natalie said, though a small voice inside her wondered if she was being foolish. She had never met any of his friends or coworkers. Their relationship existed only within the walls of his villa or in hotel rooms booked under his company name. The next morning, Natalie went shopping at Dubai Mall. As she was leaving an expensive store with a new dress Robert had insisted on buying her, she noticed a woman watching her. The woman was elegant, clearly wealthy, and something about her seemed familiar, though Natalie couldn't place her. That evening, when she arrived at Robert's villa, she found him tense, checking his phone constantly. "Is everything okay?" she asked. "Just business problems," he said quickly, putting his phone away. "My company is bidding on a major project, the Palm Island expansion." He mixed drinks and soon was telling her stories about his childhood in England, making her laugh. Later, as they lay in bed, his phone rang. He grabbed it immediately and went to the bathroom to take the call. Through the door, she heard his angry whispers. When he returned, Natalie pretended to be asleep. Robert got dressed quietly and left the villa. She waited until his car engine faded, then checked the time. It was 2 a.m. The next day at work, Natalie couldn't focus. During her lunch break, she searched Robert's name online. There were many articles about his business success, his marriage to Olivia Al Mahmoud, daughter of one of Dubai's influential families, and their social appearances. In every photo, they looked like the perfect couple. The most recent was from just last week. That night, Robert canceled their plans with a short message. The following night, too. When she finally saw him again 3 days later, he seemed distant. "Where have you been?" she asked. "Business trip to Abu Dhabi," he said, not meeting her eyes. "The project I told you about." He handed her another gift box. Inside was a bracelet that matched the necklace he had given her earlier. But this time the gift didn't make her happy. It felt like a payment, a way to keep her quiet and satisfied. As Robert spoke about future plans, Natalie wondered what she had gotten herself into, and whether she could find a way out before it was too late. Natalie found the white envelope when she returned to her apartment after work. It had been slipped under her door with no name or address. Inside was a single piece of paper with typed words. "You are not his first. Ask about Melissa and Diana. Get out while you can." Her hands shook as she read it again. The message was clear, but who had sent it? And who were Melissa and Diana? Natalie dropped onto her couch, the paper still clutched in her hand. The next day, she couldn't concentrate at work. During a meeting about an upcoming fashion show, her boss had to call her name twice before she responded. "Are you feeling okay?" he asked with concern. "Just tired," she lied. "I'll be fine." That evening, instead of meeting Robert as planned, Natalie told him she wasn't feeling well. She needed time to think. She sat at her computer and searched for Melissa and Diana along with Robert's name. Nothing useful came up. Then she tried Robert Wilson Dubai scandal and similar phrases. Still nothing. Her phone buzzed with a message from Robert. "Miss you. Feel better. I have a gift waiting. More gifts. More golden handcuffs." The next morning, Natalie arrived at work early. She was organizing files in the hotel's main event room when a man entered. She recognized him as Michael, Robert's personal assistant. She had met him briefly once when he dropped off documents at the villa. "Ms. Reed," he said nervously, "I need to speak with you." Natalie looked around to make sure they were alone. "About what?" "About Mr. Wilson." Michael wouldn't meet her eyes. "I shouldn't be doing this, but I can't watch it happen again." Her heart pounded. Watch what happened. There have been others before you. Women who got too close, who started asking questions. Natalie's mouth went dry. "Melissa and Diana?" Michael looked up, surprised. "So you know about them?" "Melissa was 2 years ago. An American like you, working at an international school. Diana was last year, British, a flight attendant." "What happened to them?" "They left Dubai suddenly. Mr. Wilson said they couldn't handle the pressure of a secret relationship. But," he paused. "But what?" Natalie pressed. Diana contacted me a few months after she left. She was scared, said Mr. Wilson had become controlling, angry when she asked questions. Then she stopped responding to my messages. A cold feeling spread through Natalie's chest. Why are you telling me this? Because you seem nice, and because I've seen the signs. Mr. Wilson has been making strange financial moves, talking privately on the phone, the way he did before the others left. Before Michael could say more, his phone rang. He checked it and his face paled. That's him. I have to go. Be careful, Ms. Reed. He hurried out, leaving Natalie frozen in place. That night she met Robert at a restaurant. He acted normal, charming as always, but now she noticed things she had missed before. How his eyes scanned the room constantly. How he answered questions about his business with vague statements that sounded impressive but said nothing. I have to go to London next week, he told her over dessert. Business meetings, but I want you to have this while I'm gone. He slid a key across the table. It's to my private safe in the villa. I've put some documents there and something special for you. What documents? She asked, trying to sound casual. Just some paperwork. Things I want you to keep safe. He smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. I trust you, Natalie. More than anyone. As she took the key, Natalie wondered if Melissa and Diana had received similar keys, similar words of trust, and what had happened after they used them. The warning note suddenly felt very real. But was it already too late to get out? The day after Robert left for London, Natalie went to his villa. Her heart beat fast as she used her key to enter. The large house felt different without him, colder, more threatening. For a moment, she stood in the entrance hall, listening to the silence. She walked slowly to his office, a room he rarely let her enter. The safe was behind a painting of the Dubai skyline. Natalie's hands trembled as she used the key Robert had given her. Inside the safe were several folders, a small jewelry box, and a USB drive. She took everything to the desk and opened the first folder. It contained financial documents with numbers that shocked her. Robert's company was in serious trouble. He owed millions to banks and private lenders. Another folder showed that most of his properties were actually owned by his wife's family company. Natalie inserted the USB drive into Robert's computer. It contained photos of a beautiful dark-haired woman she didn't recognize, smiling in various Dubai locations. In some pictures, the woman wore jewelry that looked familiar, the same pieces Robert had given to Natalie. There were also scanned passport pages for someone named Diana Lewis. The jewelry box contained a diamond ring with a note, "For Natalie when the time is right." It should have made her happy. Instead, it made her skin crawl. As she was putting everything back, her phone rang, making her jump. It was her boss from the hotel. "Natalie, we need you here right away. There's been a change with the tech conference, and there's someone asking for you, a woman. She says it's urgent." At the hotel, Natalie found her boss looking worried. "She's waiting in the small meeting room. She wouldn't give her name, just insisted on seeing you." When Natalie entered the room, she found an elegant woman sitting there, the same woman who had watched her at the mall. "Ms. Reed," the woman said in a cool voice. "I am Olivia Wilson. I believe you know my husband." Natalie's mouth went dry. "Mrs. Wilson, I..." Olivia held up her hand. "Please, let's not pretend. I know everything." She pushed a folder across the table. "Robert has a pattern. You are not special. You are just the next one." Inside the folder were photos of Robert with different women, news articles from London about a missing woman named Melissa Gray, and bank statements showing large insurance payments. "I don't understand," Natalie whispered, though a terrible understanding was forming in her mind. "My husband is not just a cheat. He is dangerous," Olivia said. "Each time he finds a woman, makes her fall in love, gives her gifts that once belonged to the woman before her. Then he uses her. Uses her for what? Whatever he needs. Money. Connections. Sometimes." Olivia paused, "sometimes as a scapegoat." Natalie felt sick. What happened to Diana and Melissa? Diana disappeared after Robert convinced her to carry a package through airport security. It contained drugs. She was arrested in Singapore. As for Melissa, Olivia's voice broke slightly. "The police never found enough evidence, but I know Robert was involved in her disappearance." "Why are you telling me this? Why not go to the police?" Robert's family has powerful connections in London. Mine has influence here. We are locked in a business marriage neither of us can easily escape. Olivia stood up. I'm warning you because I found this in his office. She handed Natalie a paper. It was a life insurance policy for $5 million on Natalie's life. Robert was the beneficiary. The policy had been taken out 3 weeks ago. He comes back from London tomorrow, Olivia said. Whatever he's planning, it's happening soon. As Olivia left, Natalie stared at the document, her mind racing with fear. She had to get out of Dubai. Tonight. Natalie rushed home and packed a small bag with just the essentials. She booked the first flight out of Dubai, a 3 a.m. departure to Bangkok. From there, she could fly home to America. She couldn't sleep, jumping at every sound outside her apartment window. Her phone rang at midnight. Robert's name flashed on the screen. Natalie stared at it, her heart pounding. She let it ring until it stopped. A minute later, a message appeared. I know you went to the villa. We need to talk. I'm on my way to you now. He was supposed to be in London until tomorrow. Natalie grabbed her bag and rushed out of her apartment. In the hallway, she bumped into her neighbor, an older woman who worked at one of the big banks. Leaving so late? The woman asked with concern. Yes, family emergency, Natalie lied, her voice shaking. Could you do me a favor? If anyone asks about me, could you say you haven't seen me? Outside, she took a taxi to a different hotel across the city, not the one where she worked. She paid cash for a room and sat by the window, watching the street below. 2 hours until she needed to leave for the airport. Her phone rang again. This time it was Michael, Robert's assistant. Ms. Reed, he said when she answered. Where are you? Mr. Wilson is looking for you everywhere. He came back early from London. Why should I tell you where I am? You work for him. Listen to me, he's dangerous. More dangerous than I realized. Michael's voice was low and frightened. I saw what he's planning. There are pills in his briefcase. The same ones that were found in Diana's bag in Singapore. And he has a recorder. He's been recording your conversations. What? Why? Evidence. To make it look like you were planning something. Like you wanted to hurt his wife. Natalie felt cold all over. I'm getting out of Dubai tonight. He knows. He's at the airport now. Security will stop you. He has connections. Meet me instead. I have another way to get you out. Natalie hesitated. Could she trust Michael? How do I know this isn't a trap? Because Robert threatened me too when he found out I warned you. Please, Ms. Reed. I'm at the Marina Yacht Club, dock number 32. A friend has a boat that can take you to Oman. From there, you can fly anywhere. Natalie checked the time. Going to the airport was too risky now. She had no choice but to trust Michael. The yacht club was quiet when her taxi arrived. Only a few lights shone on the expensive boats. Natalie walked carefully along the dock, counting the numbers. When she reached number 32, she saw a sleek white yacht with its lights on. Michael stood on the deck, waving to her. Quickly, he called softly. Natalie climbed aboard, her legs shaking from fear and exhaustion. Thank you for helping me, she said. Don't thank me yet, a deeper voice replied from the cabin doorway. Robert stepped out, smiling that charming smile that now looked evil to her. Michael backed away, his face full of guilt. I'm sorry, he whispered. He made me call you. He said he would hurt my family. Robert clapped slowly. What a performance, Michael. You deserve an award. He turned to Natalie. And you, my dear? Did you really think it would be so easy to run away from me? He pulled something from his pocket, a small recorder. I've been preparing for this moment. Let me play you something interesting. He pressed a button, and Natalie heard her own voice, taken from different conversations, edited together to sound like she was plotting against Olivia, planning to poison her, take her place. No one will believe that, Natalie said, trying to sound brave. Everyone will believe it, Robert said calmly. Especially after tonight. Robert moved closer to Natalie, the recorder still in his hand. The yacht rocked gently under their feet. Behind Robert, Michael was slowly backing away toward the exit. Tonight, Robert continued, Olivia will have a terrible accident. Too many sleeping pills with her evening wine, and the police will find evidence of your obsession with me, your jealousy of my wife, your plan to take her place. You'll never get away with this, Natalie said, looking for anything she could use as a weapon. Robert laughed. I already have, twice before. He pulled out his phone and showed her photos of himself with two women, Melissa and Diana. They were just like you, thinking they were special, that I would leave my wife for them. What did you do to them? Natalie's voice shook. Melissa became too suspicious, started asking questions, finding things in my office. His eyes went cold. She had an unfortunate accident while we were boating. Her body was never found. Natalie glanced at the dark water around the yacht. Was that his plan for her too? And Diana? Diana was more useful. She carried drugs for me without knowing. When she was caught, I made sure all evidence pointed to her working alone. He shrugged. She's still in prison in Singapore. Your wife knows everything, Natalie said. She showed me proof. For the first time, Robert looked surprised. Olivia? Impossible. She knows about Melissa and Diana. She has photos, documents. Robert's face darkened with anger. Then she'll have to join you tonight. 2 tragic deaths. The jealous mistress who killed the wife, then herself out of guilt. Natalie saw Michael inching toward a cabinet near the yacht's controls. Robert hadn't noticed, focused entirely on her. Why do all this? Natalie asked, trying to keep his attention. Why not just divorce her if you're so unhappy? Divorce? Robert laughed bitterly. Olivia's family owns everything. The properties, the business, even this yacht. A divorce would leave me with nothing. By her death, he smiled coldly. Her death makes me a very wealthy man. The life insurance alone is worth 20 million. Michael had reached the cabinet. Slowly, he opened it and pulled out something black and heavy. A gun. And what about my life insurance? Natalie asked, trying to stay calm. The one you took out on me? Just a small bonus. And protection. If your body is never found, the police might keep looking for you as a suspect. Robert pulled out a small bottle of pills. Now let's make this simple. You can take these and go peacefully to sleep, or things will get much more unpleasant. Michael raised the gun, his hands shaking. Stop, Mr. Wilson. This has gone too far. Robert turned, surprised. When he saw the gun, he laughed. Michael, put that down before you hurt yourself. You don't have the courage to use it. I do now, Michael said. I helped you lie to these women. I watched you manipulate them. But I never agreed to murder. Robert moved toward him. You're a part of this now. Your fingerprints are all over the evidence. If I go down, you go down with me. As Robert reached for the gun, Natalie grabbed a heavy metal flashlight from a nearby bench and swung it hard. It hit Robert on the back of the head with a sickening crack. He fell to the deck, unconscious. Michael stared at her, the gun still in his trembling hands. You could have killed him. He was going to kill us both, Natalie said, her whole body shaking. She pulled out her phone. We need to call the police, right now. And Olivia. She's in danger too. But before she could dial, Robert groaned and began to move. Slowly, he pushed himself up, blood trickling down his neck. His eyes, when they found Natalie, were filled with pure hatred. You'll pay for that, he growled, lunging toward her. As Robert lunged at Natalie, the yacht suddenly rocked hard. Blue police lights flashed across the water. A spotlight hit the deck. A loud voice came through a speaker. Dubai police. Nobody move. Robert froze, then spun around wildly. 3 police boats surrounded the yacht. Officers in uniform stood ready with weapons drawn. How? Robert whispered, his face pale with shock. Olivia stepped onto the deck from the cabin. She held up her phone. Emergency app. I've been tracking you, Robert, for months. She looked at Natalie. I'm sorry I used you as bait. I needed him to confess. You recorded everything? Natalie asked, understanding dawning on her. Olivia nodded, every word. She turned to the police officers now boarding the yacht. You'll find the evidence on my phone. My husband has confessed to murder and attempted murder. Robert's face twisted with rage. You planned this all along. You knew about Melissa and Diana. I suspected, Olivia said calmly, but I needed proof. I've spent the past year gathering evidence, waiting for you to make your move. She looked at Robert with cold eyes. You took everything from those women. Their trust, their love, their lives. Did you really think I would let you take mine too? As the police handcuffed Robert, he struggled suddenly, breaking free. In one desperate move, he ran to the edge of the yacht. "You'll never prove anything without me," he shouted. Then he jumped into the dark water below. The police shouted and shined lights on the water. One officer jumped in after him. Minutes passed. The officer surfaced alone, shaking his head. 3 days later, Natalie sat in a police station conference room with Olivia and a female detective. Robert's body had washed up on a beach that morning. "It's finally over," the detective said. "We found evidence in his office connecting him to Melissa's disappearance, and based on his recorded confession and Michael's testimony, we're working with Singapore authorities to have Diana released." Natalie wrapped her hands around a cup of hot tea. The nightmare was ending, but she still felt cold inside. "I believed everything he told me. I was such a fool." Olivia shook her head. "He was an expert manipulator. He'd been doing this for years. I was married to him and didn't see the truth until it was almost too late." "What will you do now?" Natalie asked her. "Rebuild my life. Use my family's resources to help women like Diana." Olivia hesitated, then added, "And I'd like to help you too. Your job at the hotel, after all this publicity." "They've been understanding but suggested I take a long leave," Natalie admitted. "I'm not sure I can stay in Dubai after everything that's happened. I have connections in New York, London, Singapore, anywhere you'd like to go. It's the least I can do." Olivia handed her a business card. "Think about it." The detective closed her folder. "There's something else you should know. We found Robert's secret accounts. He had insurance policies on both of you, plus money hidden from previous operations. Under Dubai law, as victims, you may be entitled to compensation." A week later, Natalie stood at Dubai International Airport. Her entire life fit into 2 suitcases. After everything that had happened, the police had cleared her name completely. The media had moved on to other stories, but she couldn't stay. Before boarding her flight, she received a text message from an unknown number. It was a photo of a smiling woman with dark hair, standing in front of an airport arrival gate. The message read, "Just landed in London. Free at last. Thank you, Diana." Natalie smiled for what felt like the first time in months. As she walked toward her gate, she deleted all of Robert's messages, photos, and contacts from her phone. Her new life was waiting, one where she would never again ignore her instincts. One where the only person she needed to trust was herself.